Hello, welcome everybody to this special video, Zoom, Facebook Live, Instagram, YouTube, wherever you're watching, with Dr. Dain here on WTF is Being.
Yeah,
Welcome, Dain.
thank you, Emily.
So, 10 years ago, you wrote a book called Being You, Changing the World. And
Yeah,
at the
there it is.
time, oh, you have it in camera.
There it is.
There it is. And
There's that
at the
book.
time, people didn't really talk about being you. And now it's everywhere. You see it on t-shirts and commercials, like all over. So I'd love to have a chat with you about really like what is being you? How do you know when you're being you? And maybe a little bit of where you came up with the idea to write the book.
Well, it is interesting because it's a bit of a long story how I got there. When I came to Access Consciousness, I was at a place where I wanted to end my life, and I was doing anything other than being me. And I thought that whatever it was that I was being had the least value in the world, and I see a lot of people that have a similar point of view. And so I got my bars run, and it quite literally saved my life. And I was like, wow. I went into the session depressed and suicidal and in such judgment of me and everything I'd created. And I came out of it with a gratitude for being alive that was so beautiful. And I was like, if this is the way it feels to be alive, I'm in. Well, I took the Access Foundation class because I could. And I resisted it for a while. And then I finally like, okay, fine. Because I knew what change it was going to create in my life. And after that class, the founder of Access, Gary Douglas, came for a chiropractic session with me. And it was so cool because there was this energy that came through, and it had this sense of infinite possibilities to it. It had this sense where everything could be changed. And so I did this session on him, and first my hands were on his body, and then I was working off of his body. But all the whole time it was like I knew. And the way it came about was he said, you need to go straight to the third level of chiropractic that you do. And I didn't know how to do it. And I said, I just started studying this, and I didn't know he was psychic and he would know. And he said, look, ask my body what it wants, follow the energy, you will know what to do. And he was the first person in my life that ever said I would know something, and I knew how to do something. And I was like, wow. And there was such a beautiful energy that was present between us, but it felt like it was in the whole room. It felt like I was accessing something that like mystics access, it was amazing to me. And so I did this session on him, and he got up and he was like, that was incredible. And in my mind, I was like, well, he doesn't know what this chiropractic is supposed to be. And, because I had spent so much of my life in so much judgment of me. And yet what it did was it opened up this different way of working with people. And what I now realize it did was it undoes people's limitations by giving them access to their being. Because when you're functioning from your being, judgment is irrelevant. It doesn't have any relevance in your world anymore. Judgment of you and other people. And when you're functioning from your being, all those things that you didn't know how to change, they just sort of start changing as if by magic. And it's like, and so I was able to help people change things. And physically, I was able to, easy for me to say, other than talking, I was able to do everything but talk. And I was able to help people change things energetically, emotionally. And they came away with a sense of, I can do and be anything. And it was so beautiful. And I finally started teaching a class to try to give more people access to this energy. And I called it Energetic Synthesis of Being. That's the name I eventually arrived on, because what I realized it did was it took all the places where they'd cut off from being them, and all the places where they didn't value it or were made wrong for it. So they weren't able to be the very simplest of things that like children get to be, because we see children who are just them, whatever they are.
Yeah.
And as we grow up and learn to be in this world, we learn that this is bad and this is wrong and this is right and this is good. And we try to somehow put all these things together and mash them up into something that works, except we're in a constant state of judgment of us for what am I being that's too much and what am I not being, and all of these things. And so in creating that class, I was able to have conversations with groups of people about what it could truly be if you showed up as you. And people would tell me, I've never heard a conversation like this before. I've done every spiritual modality. I've done every self-help modality in the world. and nobody is talking like this. And even more than that, nobody is being this energy with me. And what I'm noticing is an ability to get out of judgment of everything I've been judging myself for. And so people would tell me this over and over and over. And I was like, this is so cool, because this is always, from the time I was a little kid, this is what I wanted to bring to people's lives and to the world. And so after several of these classes, I was like, I want to get this to more people. So I had transcripts from these classes. And I had transcripts from these classes put together. And I asked one person to create what I thought was going to be the ESB book, so we could start having these conversations with people in the world, because somebody will consume a book, they're willing to read a book a lot of times before they're willing to go to a class.
Yeah.
And I thought this would be a great way to put this in a form people could digest. And so I had one person, and it had no magic and no beauty to it. And this class is magical and beautiful. And I went through 5 different people. And then I found somebody named Katerina Valentin, who wrote this, and she took all of these transcripts, everything everybody else had. And what she sent me back was pure magic. I read the first page and I started crying, and I was like, this is so beautiful. This actually gives people an invitation to the energy, the space, and the magic of being them just by reading it. And so we created the Being You Changing the World book. That's how the book came into being.
Yeah.
But it was from conversations I was able to have with people these beautiful people who were willing to go someplace no man, woman, or child had ever been willing to go or explore before. And so this has been going on, this facilitating of the class, these having of the conversations has been going on for the last, 20 years, to a certain degree. And the class, I guess, for the last 15 or so. And so that's where the Being You Changing the World book came from. And what it made me realize was that there are a lot of people out there in the world that if they can just be invited energetically, they have the total capacity to be them, whatever that is for them. And it's different for all of us.
Yeah. Well, I mean, talking about those energetic synthesis of being classes where you got the transcripts from all around the world. And I remember being in my first one as well. And there's not a manual for the class, because how could you have a manual for Being You? Although the book is
kind of
that in a lot of ways, kind of that. But I remember just being like, this is everything. It's like how the universe really works, like how you can play with energy. But I love what you said too about kids, how kids be, and they're just so, I'm just being me. And it seems like as adults, we tend to create this image that is different from the being that we are inside. So how have you found that we that we get back to just being us? Like, what is that? How do we go about that?
One of the things I suggest that people do is look for inspiration. Like things that really inspire you, where you go that, and especially where somebody is being and doing something different. And there are so many sources of it if we'll look. See, the first part has to be with the desire to actually have that. Because what most people do is when they're little kids, they have a desire to just be and do whatever they want. And then we're taught that we need to be this, and we need to be this, and we need to be this, culminating in the creation of what, like you said, the image that we try to portray to people about who we are. Well, a lot of times on the inside, it feels like we're dying inside, because when you're not truly being you, it feels like you're dying inside. And that's where you have all the self-judgment and the self-ridicule and the criticism and very few happy days. You may have happy moments, which is wonderful. Those happy moments are when you're truly being you. And then what do? Then, of course, a few minutes later, it feels like it goes away and I'm not getting to be me anymore. What happened? Well, that's all the stuff that starts to change as you start to go into the space of being you, whatever that is. And here's the thing. It's like, I've been talking about this for 20 years, and there still is no short answer to what is being you.
Yeah.
And there's no short path, because it's an ongoing path that opens up all the time. And people would say to me, are you being you? I'm like, yeah, a lot more than I was yesterday or 20 years ago. And there's a lot more to come. So we need to recognize it is a marathon. It's not a sprint. It's an ongoing journey, but the benefits of the journey are so numerous and is so friggin' wonderful. And so when you're truly being you, it's when you have a sense of peace, You have a sense of like looking at you in the mirror and going, wow, I actually like that person. You have a sense of being happy. You have a sense of being able to create whatever you want and also change whatever's not working. And so it's like this energy that sort of fills you from within, I guess would be one way to put it, that just is. And it's also where you stop looking for an outside source for either someone to blame for the problems or someone that you believe needs to save you from your life. And instead you go, I got this. And you're willing to receive contribution from anybody and everybody. But at the same time, you realize that you need to be the source and you need to be the one choosing it.
Wow, like that, like being us is actually how we create our lives.
Yeah, exactly that.
Yeah.
Being us is how we create our lives.
And you said like when you are light and happy, that's when you're being you. And the other stuff actually is when you're not. So what do you do, or like what would you recommend for those times where you're not that, you're having a hard day? Like how are there actions you take or things you do to get you back to that space that is you?
Okay. Well, what I do and what I suggest that other people do is I write down, I've got a list that it's so long. It covers pages of notes on my phone, okay, of different resources, different things that when I listen to them, when I read them, or when I do them, create more lightness in my world. So fundamentally, how do you know when you're being you? You have a sense of lightness. That's the easiest way. And yet a lot of people are so disconnected from being them. They're like, what is lightness? Well, you ever have one of those days where you're listening to, maybe driving in your car, you're at home or whatever, you have your little Bluetooth speaker and you're just cranking some music that you love and you're like, dancing like nobody's watching, and just going for it. That's one, So I've got in my mind, I got a lot of music too. And thank goodness for Spotify, because I can put in blue, blue, blue. And there's tons of things that come up like it, And lately I've really been loving hard rock. I've been loving driving in the convertible, playing, like Back in Black. And I love it because people see, this nice convertible drive up playing Back in Black. They're like, who the fuck is that? And I'm like, I'm just being me. Hi. But that's really, if we would allow ourselves to realize that there are many things that enliven us and that bring that energy back to us. And for me, like Access Bars, for example, going for a run, listening to great music that I love, having conversations about exploring possibilities, giving somebody wonderful a hug. Like these are just some of the things on my list. So everybody out there, please, as of right now, write down my list of being me resources and anything that makes you lighter. And it doesn't matter if it makes anybody else lighter, because they ain't going to get it the same way you are ever. So don't worry about it. Don't try to give it to other people, because they can only have it when they're willing to choose it. And that's okay. And write down a list of all the things that make you lighter, all the things that make you happier, all the things that when you choose them, you feel more like you. And one of the other ways of getting to, ADHD. One of the things about me being me is ADHD, big time. Okay. So brush anything. Finishing a complete sentence for me is like, oh, good job, Dave. Way to go. Okay, way to go. Okay. But one of the things about that is when you have that list, then because when you're not being you, when you have the heaviness and when you have the judgment and the yuck and you don't even know what it is, we often then look for what is the cause so I can eliminate the cause so I can get back to being me. Well, a lot of times, don't look for the cause. Just go choose something that is more you than that thing, and you'll get to more of you. And it may not take it all away. And then you go down your list, you're like, boom, okay, another one. And after doing 2 or 3 things that are more like you, you'll be like, oh my gosh, I feel a lot more like me. I don't even know what that was, but I don't care anymore. Rather than looking for the cause of what it is. And what occurs in the Being You classes and what occurs when you read the Being You book is there's just this space where more of you is available. And you can't really put it into words, but it's there. And the other thing is when we get into sort of like cranky, yucky, stuck, what the fuck mode, which is us not being us. If we'd realize that this is always when we're not truly being us. And there's so many conversations to have around that and ways that could show up and ways of tweaking it and undoing it so you can get back to you. But that's when we forget that there are things that will get us to be us again. And that's why I say write down the list and then just go down, like flip through it and see what your eyes focus on and do it. Read it, watch it, listen to it, do it.
Well, it helps so much because those days where we are like, bah, if you don't have the list, it's really easy to just kind of sit and, like you said, think about the problem, which I've heard you say many times, like thinking about it only gets you in deeper. But that's like what we've been taught here to get out of stuff, rather than this action of like, what could I choose here? Which is such a different way of looking at it.
Yeah. And that really is, it's really, and it takes training. Here's the weird part to me. Okay, look at a little kid when they come in. Are they judging themselves? I mean, are you kidding? They poo in their own pants and don't judge it. Hello? They're not judging themselves. Okay? So it's like, let's recognize that little kids don't judge. We teach them how as a way of navigating reality, but judgment is not a way of successfully navigating reality. It's a way of continuously judging you in relationship to what you're choosing. Okay, so blah, blah, blah. But if we look at that, so little kids don't judge. We teach them how to judge. And in essence, so here's my question to everybody. Would you as a being judge? And the answer, of course, is hell no. And so then you go, well, if I as a being wouldn't judge, why do I do so much of it? Because from the time you were a little kid, you were taught that that's what you had to do in order to fit in here and in order to get things right and not get things wrong, because you as a being are, of course, wrong if you're not judging everything that you're doing. And so what you've done is you've basically brainwashed yourself out of being. And I hate to say brainwash because people are like, oh, brainwashing, oh my God. Okay. All I mean is you have trained yourself rather dynamically out of being and into judgment. And you've been trained that way by the world we live in, which is why it's called being you, changing the world. Because with enough of us being beyond that, it doesn't have to be our world anymore. We could actually raise our kids from a totally different place. And I see access parents who do access, who have kids who are starting to raise them differently, which is an acknowledgement that your choice creates, and you don't have to judge in order to choose. You just have to choose and realize it's going to create something. But so that's my sense of possible future, is having a world in which we don't teach kids to judge. But if you recognize you've been doing that for however many years you've been alive, well, then it's going to take a little while moving forward to undo all of this stuff that you've instituted. And you know what? It's okay. It's not because you're wrong. It's not because you're bad. It's because when you do something, you do it. So when you do, I'm going to judge like everybody else to create my life. You do it really well. So it's an acknowledgement of how much power you have, actually. And so now what can we do that is beyond that? What other choices do we have that we've never considered that would make this path to us getting to truly be us easier, more fun, quicker, and greater than we ever thought it could be? So everything that doesn't allow that, right, wrong, good and bad, pot and pock, all nine shorts, boys, and beyonds. Now, if you're new to Access and you don't know what the hell I just said, it's called the clearing statement, which can be found at theclearingstatement.com. Look here. And that is about a 20-minute video of me explaining this clearing statement. But the beauty of the clearing statement is when something comes up and you want to change it, you use that and it changes. It's amazing.
Yeah. Well, it's funny because as you talk about that, like being a little kid and learning to judge, it seems like I was talking to someone who wasn't familiar with this concept, and they're like, well, of course I'm being me. Kind of like the idea, well, my eyes are awake, I'm conscious, right?
Yeah.
And it's this beautiful, like you said, it's not always easy, but the rewards of it's like, why would you want to explore this? Like, what rewards practically are on the other side when you're being you?
Yeah. Great question. Everything. Yeah. Meaning, if you could get a sense of what it would be like to wake up in the morning with gratitude for you, gratitude for what your life is, and gratitude that you would just be making it greater every day. A sense of knowing what is true for you in every situation, knowing what you would like to choose moving forward, knowing what you would like to choose to change to make your life better now. Also, it's where you can be in the world without walls and barriers. and you can have anything show up and it's okay. Like, how many people do you know that if something doesn't work out perfectly, something is bad and wrong, and they have to make themselves wrong? And what I found is I really like to laugh at myself when I do stupid things, because we all do stupid things, and being you gives you the freedom to go, I screwed that one up big time. Sorry.
Well, you don't try to cut it out. Like, I love when you do videos like the hundreds of others that are on here on YouTube. We were talking about this with some other people on your team yesterday, and how you will be like, "Oh, my face looks fat from that angle," like, but you don't cut it out in the video. You're just like, this is what is, like, unfiltered. This is me.
Yeah, exactly that. Unfiltered. This is me. It's like that in The Greatest Showman. I love that song. This is us, or this is me.
This is me.
You got it. Exactly that. And that is, it's like, this is me is what you get when you're being you, but you get to be you without apology. Now, here's the other thing that gets confusing is we have certain people that we think are really being them, and they're not nice. They're unkind to other people. It's all about them, and you have to do whatever they want. Otherwise they judge you, and they're like, fuck you, I'm better than you, and all that. That's not being you. That's trying to prove that you think you're great when you really feel like you're a pile of shit, because people try to prove the opposite of what they believe they are. And so here's a question I like to ask is, everything you've misidentified and misapplied as being that isn't, will you let that go, and will you destroy and uncreate it, please? Right and wrong, good and bad, pot and pock, all nine, shorts, boys, and beyonds. And I would also ask, what have you misidentified and misapplied as being that isn't? And what have you misidentified and misapplied as not being you that actually is being you? Because it's these lies about what it is that really confuse us and stick us. And if we ask this question and run this process enough, what happens is we start to get to this place of, oh, I chose that in reaction to somebody. It didn't make me feel lighter. I guess that's not really me. And we buy a lot of points of view about how we're supposed to be growing up. And that when we be something that we bought that we were supposed to be, we're not really being authentically us. We're being a form of reaction or resistance to something that if we were truly being us, we might not resist and react to at all. Well, in fact, if we were truly being us, we wouldn't resist and react. So everything that is, will you destroy and uncreate all that, please? All you beautiful people around the world. Right, wrong, good and bad, pot, pock, all nine, shorts, boys, beyonds. And hello, everybody watching the replay later. We just want to acknowledge you and say thank you for watching. We're glad you're here.
And when you say that, not only resist and react, but how much do we align and agree with what's supposed to be us? Like, what would be the perfect good way to be in the world? That would be the image I want to project as being me, which doesn't really have anything to do with being us. So how do we get out of that? Because there's so much of that in the world right now with social media and
Well, so let's look at this. How many projections and expectations, separations, judgments, and rejections do you have about what being you is that it isn't, that you bought from other people? Everything that is, will you destroy and uncreate it, please? Right and wrong, good and bad, pot and pock, all nine, shorts, boys, and beyonds. And how many projections, expectations, separations, judgments, and rejections did you have directed at you by people who wanted something from you or wanted you to be something for them? And they used their judgment and their projection to try to get you to do what they wanted, which had nothing to do with you being you. Everything that is times a godzillion. Right and wrong, good and bad, pot and pock, all nine, shorts, boys, and beyonds. My pillow was crooked. I had to change my pillow. I had crooked pillow syndrome. I had CPS.
Well, how much does that start too? When you talked earlier about how kids don't come here judging. Yeah. And I remember a specific moment when my daughter was, I don't know, maybe 3 or 2 and playing at a playground. And until then, it was like she would run up to anyone and just go, hi, and they would just start playing. And then I remember how confused she was the first time she went up to another little girl, and the girl was like, "Why would I play with you?" And she was just like, "What is going on here?" And came back crying. And looking back at that, I didn't, that's like was the beginning of learning that, oh, people judge here. What did I show up at that wasn't right? Like, what do I need to change so that someone would play with me? And then
Yeah.
when they go to school, it's so interesting how early that starts.
Yeah, it is. And that's the thing is that's why we that's why I have so many of these conversations. That's why I wrote the book, because what you can be invited to energetically to be that is actually you is so much more than even all that we can talk about, because
Yeah.
we can point out a situation like that, but if you show somebody the energy of being if you show somebody if you can find that way of unlocking that thing in their world energetically, and they just get to be the them they are, then they have it for the rest of their lives. It's like teaching a person to fish versus giving them a fish. You know, in that case, when you unlock that space, that stuck place in their world, and they open up, you're actually teaching them to fish, and they will have that for the rest of their lives. And they may get further or closer from it or to it, but they'll always have it. It'll always be the new sort of platform for what they get to be in the world.
Yeah. Well, and that's why these conversations are always so interesting, because
Wow.
like you said, do you want to post that comment?
Yeah.
There you go.
We just lost our 20-year-old son in a car accident. Trust me, you get this gratitude thing right when this occurs very fast. Therefore, you're forced to choose grateful or a life of brutal grief. To me, it's an easy choice and the only choice I could have made. What a phenomenal choice, my dear. Thank you. I'm so exuberantly grateful for those 20 years with my non-judgmental Connor. He knew how to do life and be himself so truly well. HonorConnorFund.org. Dude, just got to say, that is beautiful. And that right there, that's choice. Because there are a lot of people, I know so many people who have lost children who are still in grief and anger and upset. And if you look at it, her choice to honor him is actually to have gratitude for the gift this being is and was. And if we could just go a step further, it's like we have these beautiful beings who come into our lives, who are a gift to our lives for the time that they are. And then sometimes it's time for them to move on and go and be and do something else. And if we can honor that and acknowledge that and not make them wrong, not make us wrong, not make the world wrong, and not rail at the world for allowing this to occur, look at how much more peace our lives have, how much more access to joy, how much more access to possibilities. And does that mean it doesn't hurt sometimes? Hell no. But the gift of being you is you can be present with the hurt too and allow it to be there, but it doesn't diminish you. And I think that's one of the biggest aspects of being is no matter what you experience and no matter what goes on, it doesn't diminish you any longer. And you're truly in this space of being able to be present with anything that occurs in a different way than most people realize can exist.
Wow. That's so beautifully put. You know, when I asked earlier, because people often ask, why would I want to choose being you? But that, it's like life can be interesting and a lot of things can come your way, but it's this being you, that woman's choice, the choice that we have to be that is one of the most empowering ways of living that I've ever seen offered. That is so simple.
True story. And that's why I also say that one of the big aspects of being us is knowing that we have choice.
Yeah.
You know, here we have something, and if you look at it, and I've said for so many years, your point of view creates your reality. Reality does not create your point of view. And so here's a reality presented. What is your point of view going to be about it? It would have been very easy for her and very common from what I've seen with people who've experienced the same thing to go into that resentment of the world and anger and destroy their lives and make their lives less to prove that they're suffering from what was done to them by the world, and to prove that they cared. And also there's a lot of things that are being proven in that. And in this, there's no proving, there's just an acknowledgement. I have such gratitude for this being in my life. And I have such gratitude for the time that we had together. And one of the other things that occurs from being you is you don't try to own people and hold on to them. You actually empower them. And when it's time for them to move on, it's time for them to move on. And it's okay, which is weird because a lot of people, well, it's not weird to me, but it's weird for a lot of people because a lot of people don't really get it. They're like, I don't understand what? And so this is something though that we can have the choice for. But once again, I say it's our choice. And the other part is some of the choices that seem the very most difficult to make, like that may seem like they're impossible to make, are the choices that really show us what we're made of and what we truly are. And so a lot of people try to avoid choices like that. And what I say is go forward and let the world come to you and keep friggin' choosing. And here's the other thing is you're never going to choose perfectly. None of us do. We're all going to fuck shit up. Okay. We're good at that. Let's just acknowledge that. Let's acknowledge we're really good at it. You know, one of the things I've said is I probably screwed up more things than most people have ever chosen because I'm willing to screw things up. So therefore I choose and 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 I keep choosing, but I keep changing also and course correcting all the way along. But that's because I've gotten rid of a lot of the judgment of myself. Not completely still. But for the most part, it's like I don't tend to judge myself anymore. And that's been a 50-year journey, basically, but especially a 20-year journey after having the tools of realizing I didn't have to judge myself, because nothing else out there in the world, nothing else that I have found is talking about you not judging you and you not judging others. Nothing else out there in the world. Most things are trying to get you to get better, more right judgments so you can feel more right about yourself and feel more right compared to other people, rather than getting out of judgment completely, which is really the only space where freedom and being truly exist.
So, and I love that. And how does someone who is very much a perfectionist or, and even when that comes from like, I just want it to, like things to turn out okay. How do you get out of that crippling thing of, but it needs to be right or good, or I can't choose it? Like, how do you go beyond that place of wanting to get it right and judging ourselves?
Stop it. Okay, so a couple things that might help is when you do perfectionism, when you have that need, because perfectionism is a need. And it's interesting because need is something that we learn also. Because would an infinite being have needs? No, an infinite being, which is what we've been told that we are, which is what we actually are, by the way. But we've been told this, we just don't believe it. But an infinite being wouldn't function from need, they would function from choice. So it's usually a need to be validated by ourselves and other people. Here's the problem is no one can validate you. And no one can validate anything that you're not willing to acknowledge about you. So the idea goes something like this. We grew up with perfectionists, or we grew up with really judgmental people. And in our little mind at the time, you know, our little kid mind usually, in our growing up mind without having had experience of the world other than these judgmental people we're living around, we think if we can just be perfect enough, they'll stop judging us. They'll stop delivering anger at us. They'll stop abusing us, and they'll stop hating us. And then they might even get happy. That's a lot of weight to put on young shoulders. Yep. That's a lot of weight to put on old shoulders. That's a lot of weight to put on anybody's shoulder, no matter how big, old, young, big, or small they are. And so we go into this idea thinking that if we can just be perfect enough, then we can change other people. But that doesn't actually work. And so if we can recognize that we have a dynamic desire to please other people, a dynamic desire to make other people happy, and we also have a dynamic desire to be seen.
Yeah.
All of those go into creating the perfectionism. So the question you asked, unfortunately, is not the quickest of answers. Okay.
Yeah.
Because and we find this in so many of these aspects of this, which is why I created a 3-day class. Because it's like, here, let me give you being in an hour. I'm like, I'll do my best as much as I possibly can, because I know there's always going to be more.
Yeah, well, I was going to say, you have this 3-day class, the energetic synthesis of being. You have a 3.5-day class, being you changing the world. The book, being you changing the world, and hundreds of videos too. Like we can tap into it here for this short conversation, but there's also so many on your YouTube channel, on Facebook, and Instagram that do take one of these questions and dive into it a lot more, because I get there's so much. Like someone just asked again, what is this pod thing you're saying? And if you just joined us, it's the clearing statement, theclearingstatement.com. You can go to get more information. You can put up our magic banner again.
Yeah. And it's a way of changing anything you want to change. I consider it one of the biggest developments, one of the biggest upgrades in personal development since there's been personal development. Most people go cancel clear, but it doesn't really change anything. And this actually changes the underlying energetic thing that you just brought up. So that's what the clearing statement is for. And if you're in the presence of it being run several times, you just start to get lighter. It's like, oh, cool. Yeah. So let's look at this perfection thing just a little bit further. So one of the things you can do is you can ask, what do I love about having to be perfect? Now, this is weird because you would go, I hate it. I hate having to be perfect. But one of the things that I found, which is kind of weird, is that anytime you say you hate something, but it shows up over and over and over, the way of getting to the insane point of view that keeps it in place is asking yourself, what do I love about this? And you're like, what? Like recently I asked myself, what do I love about always having to be late? And then I go, okay, everything that is right and wrong, good and bad, pot and pock, all 9, shorts, boys, men's, or just pock and pod, pock and pod, pock and pod, pock and pod. And I asked that several times and nothing came up. And then I asked it again and I went, oh my God, it was the one sense of power and control that I had as a kid, because I was taken from house to house and I was abused and all kinds of stuff and felt like everybody else was in control of my life. And the one thing I could do to say, fuck you very much, was be late. Because unless I had all my stuff, I couldn't go. So I was like, ha, 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 ha. I'm secretly showing you that things need to be different here. And anyway, and it was something that I said I hated my whole life. And once I asked, what do I love about it? I realized it was a strategy I was using to create an effect. And this is the thing that we do. Perfection is a strategy you use to try to create an effect, whether it's acknowledgement, whether it's changing people and making them happy, or whether it's finally feeling good about yourself or finally feeling good about other people. So there's so many pieces to it. But if you ask, what do I love about always having to be perfect? And pock and pod and pock and pod and pock and pod and pock and pod, and ask it again and pock and pod and ask it again and pock and pod and ask it again, you might find that underneath it is, oh, I thought this was a way of creating this and this and this and this. See, we don't do limitation for limitation's sake. We do limitation because we bought that it will get us something that is unlimited or less limited. That's why we do it. See, and the whole conversation about us being us is, would an infinite being need to be a perfectionist? Well, no, but we do it a lot. Why? Because these are strategies that we've learned to try to create a result. So how many strategies have you all learned to try to create a result, to change something in you or someone else that actually don't work, but you haven't found anything else better, so you keep doing it? Or it worked one time out of 1,000, so you were like, oh, this works. And you haven't recognized the last 999 times it hasn't worked, so you're still doing it. Everything that is destroy and uncreate it, please. Right and wrong, good and bad, pot and pock, all 9, shorts, boys, and beyonds. And then the other thing, go ahead. Okay. The other thing about perfection, you can ask two questions that can be very helpful, not just for perfection, but anything that feels like a life theme for you or that keeps coming up. You can ask, how old am I being? And just get the sense. And you'd be like, 2. What? Hold on. Wait a minute. Like, I've literally asked people this in class where I'm like, okay, they're like, I'm a perfectionist and blah, blah, blah. And we have some of these conversations. And then I go, so when you're being a perfectionist, how old are you being? 2. I'm like, cool. What happened at 2? They're like, and then they tap into this energy that they didn't know was there, that they've been hiding from forever. And they go, oh my God, my mom and dad got divorced. And my dad hated my mom. And my mom my mom hated my dad too. And I was stuck in the middle. And I felt so bad about not being able to change it that I thought if I could just be perfect enough, yep. At 2 years old, before you can even talk. And so, what? So if you ask, how old am I being? And be present with it and just get the sense and just say, hey, what happened? Because once again, part of being you is recognizing that you actually choose based on the tools you have available at the time. And you're not choosing to try to be screwed up and limited. You're choosing to try to be greater, but the only tool you have at the time is X, Y, or Z, and it's not the tool that will create that. But at least you're trying to choose something in response to a situation. And so what I found is people do the best damn job they can with the tools they have available, but the tools that are available primarily suck, and here we are trying to use, we're trying to build a house and we're using like wet fish and ice cubes. And it's like,
this isn't working.
Not working very well. You know what I mean? And poo to keep it held together, until the ice cubes melt at least. And then you get the idea. Mm-hmm. That's the idea of, what most people have as their tools for how to change things. And so if you ask, how old are you being, then go and get the sense of some of the energy around it at least, and ask for more awareness if you need it to change it more. And then just go, okay, so everything I decided and everything I chose and everything I locked into place and everything I decided I had to be and everything I decided I couldn't be, destroy and uncreate it. Destroy is take down the structure of the prison cell you're living in. Uncreate is take your creative energy out of holding those walls and that structure in place so they can actually go into creating your life. And then run the clearing statement. Or you could do the short form, puck and pot, puck and pot, puck and pot. I love some of the emojis. Running on good and bad, pot and puck, all nine, shorts, boys, and beyonds. If your house were made of wet fish and ice cubes, I would not visit. I agree. I am with
you. One of the things you said was the question of what happened at 2. And I noticed someone put in the chat, I don't remember before 6. And one of the magic things about energy and energetic awareness that I read the Being You book, and it was, I had every page dog-eared and underlined. And then I remember the first class with you, the ESB, Energetic Synthesis of Being. And I didn't get before being in that space that you could ask a question like that. And with a room full of people and no judgment, that it went so beyond what my mind could remember. There was a seed somewhere that I did know. And can you talk a bit about that? I don't know how to put words, you can put words to that, but this is when being energy is so beyond the mind that there is something available that is not possible when you are stuck here or trying to do X, Y, and Z.
Yeah, and I think you said it brilliantly, is I didn't know that was available, and neither did I. And it really surprised me when I was in a class and I got asked the question, okay, when I got asked questions about what I knew, I was like, what? Because nobody else is talking like this. Like nobody else in the world had ever brought that up to me. So I was like, what? And so like, how old are you being? Here's the weird part is I can ask you about something and because you know the energy of it, because we're energetic beings. Fundamentally, we're energetic beings. And so we respond to the energy of things and people around us. And if we're truly being us, we can actually be creative of the energy of what shows up for us and what shows up for people around us. to make it greater. And so the recognition of there's all of these energies stored on the timeline of your life that you don't cognitively have awareness of. And if you've been trying to figure something out over and over and over and over, it's because it's then realize it's not figure outable. The answer to that lies in your insane mind, not your logical mind. Because if logic would fix it, you would have already changed it by now. So everything you've all done to believe that you can solve things with logic, and everything you've done to try to do that, but it hasn't worked, rather than looking and asking what would work and what would it take to change this? Will you destroy and uncreate it, please? Right, wrong, good and bad, pot and pock, all nine shorts, boys and beyonds.
Well, and what I've seen is with the tools you offer and access consciousness and this really, I don't know a better way to describe it than magic that can show up when you are going with the energy and asking questions. And can you take something like at maybe the area of like money and how like something with that seems undefinable, like being you, can actually change something at which seems as solid and real here as like your money situation?
Yeah, absolutely. And before that, I need to add one other question that you can ask in addition to how old am I being, is who am I being? Because one of the things that we do is we adopt other people's realities, basically. Like we take the template of their reality and we overlay it on us. And now we try to be like them, because one of the other things we're looking for, of course, is to be loved, to be accepted, to be acknowledged, to be valued. And we think if we make ourselves enough like somebody else, then they will actually like us. And we also figure, okay, these are my parents. These are the people I'm closest to. They must be successful in this reality. So we want to be successful like them. So what do? We become them. So when you're ever in a situation where you realize you are not being you and it is not working and your logical mind isn't figuring it out, yes, how old am I being? And also, who am I being? And then all you got to do when you realize, oh my goodness, I'm being my mom, I'm being my dad, I'm being my blah, I'm being my grandma, I'm being the teacher, I'm being blah. Just go, everything that is, I now, and you got to make the choice to let it go. I now destroy and uncreate it. Pock and pot, all that stuff.
That's the other thing I did want to ask you. I saw it was earlier up in the thread. Someone said, but I've used the clearing statement and it doesn't work. And I've tried this 50 times. And I've heard you say again, I'd love you to maybe talk a bit about choice. Always, it trumps everything. And choice is a part of the equation of, can you talk a bit about that?
Yeah, choice is where it's at. Like it does, it trumps everything. That choice to go, okay, I'm willing to have this change, even if it kills me and everyone I know, and even if the planet explodes. Okay, because one of the reasons we will not let things go is because we know the predictable future that will occur. And we know that we can create a future that goes along a particular line if we hold all these things in place. So changing them is something we're not willing to do because, oh, if I, like, for example, and and this ties in perfectly, of course, I have a couple of kids being them.
You can hear it in the back.
Seeing if maybe they might come shut the door, but probably no luck. So what we do is we keep making these choices in order to have a predictable future, rather than allowing ourselves to change something, believing that we might lose us, we might lose other people, we'll lose our relationships. And going back to the money thing you were talking about, is a lot of times what people will do is they hold on to their money situation because all of their friends have a similar money situation or a similar money point of view. So they won't change it. And they're like, I can't change it. I can't change it. I can't change it. Whenever somebody tells me I can't change something, I'm like, hold on, let's have a conversation here. Okay. Because whenever somebody tells me they can't, it's a point of view that they have bought and a point of view that they've chosen that is not actually what's true, because we have the capacity to change anything. So I realize, And if we could recognize that we're choosing these things, once again, because of the benefit we believe that we'll get. Okay. Hey, can you shut my door, please? Thank you. Oh my God. I kind of hate to shut the door because it's so darn cute. And I love, they're laughing and running and yelling, and it's just so friggin' adorable. I love their enthusiasm, and they're getting to play and be them. And these are two kids that have been allowed to be them their entire lives. Yeah. Their mom does an amazing job with that, which is so cool. And they're not my kids, by the way. Okay. They belong to Grace, Carrie's daughter, just so you know. And so we need to recognize that once again, these choices that we make, even when they're creating a limitation for us, we believe are giving us something of value. Otherwise, we wouldn't choose them. But in order to access that, you need to be willing to truly ask yourself a question rather than go forth with the accusation of you that you've been functioning from. And so one of the big things people have trouble changing is money. And why? Because what people don't recognize is they've chosen their money situation. They usually learned how to be with money from their parents, how to have or not have money from their parents. They learned the appropriate level of stress around money to have from their parents. They learned how hard you have to work for money from their parents. They learned whether it comes easy or not from their parents. And they also learned that their future, or they decided that they were going to create a future like their parents. But the problem is, I guess I would say beyond logically, we have this idea that if I just choose this, then everything's going to work out. But it actually doesn't. Unless you're choosing your being, you're always up and down, and a lot more down than up most of the time, simply because you're not being you, you're being all of these other points of view. So being you as it relates to money, actually, and this is the thing I ask people to ask for, is to actually ask for ease with money. Because most people have this idea of an amount of money that they need to have. And if they had that amount of money, then everything would work. So they ask for that amount of money. Except their real point of view is they'll never get that amount of money. So they try. And the other thing is, for the seekers of the world, we call them the humanoids in access, the weirdos like us that are still watching this right now. You can't do anything just for money. It doesn't work. How many of you have tried? It's like everything I do, I don't do it for the money. I do it for the joy of contributing to people, the joy of seeing the world change, the joy of seeing people's faces change, the joy I get when they say, oh my God, my whole world is different. Thank you so much. I'm getting so much more. And I like my life so much more. I'm getting to actually be me. And I'm getting to that's what it really is. Yes. I'm like, that's why I do it. And if you do what you do for the joy of it and for the contribution to others and the contribution to you and the contribution to the world, money will start to show up way more easily. If you're trying to do it for the money, it doesn't work that way. But being you is having a sense of the energy you'd really like to have as your life. And if you do it from there and ask for the money and are willing to receive the money too, that works. That's a winning formula. That's not a formula. What were you going to say?
I was going to say, you're just such a great example of this. And you have said many times, like, money follows joy. And as you said, being you is lightness, it's joy. So you have that. It's funny. It's energetic. The money follows that. But you have a great story of when you were little and someone asked you were on your way to get, was it candy? Will you tell that story? Because it's such a great example when you're just being you.
Yeah,
like,
totally.
Even money can show up.
Well, I was at a point, and I had actually, what happened was my stepmother's a born again Christian. And so I had never gone to church or anything. And so I went to this camp for kids. It was like indoctrination into the Christian faith, which was awesome. And I didn't really get much out of anything, except there was something they said. And this is another thing that can be very helpful for us. Somebody will say something to you and it'll just like ping you, like ding, and you're like, and you listen to it, right? Well, the one thing they said was, if you want to be forgiven for your sins. Now, here I am, 12 years old, okay? knowing that I'm of course wrong because I have sinned. Thank you, God. Okay. Everything that brought up, Pock and Pod. They said, if you want to be forgiven for your sins, invite Jesus into your heart. And I was like, okay, I'd like to be forgiven for my sins. And I had a sense then, because here's one of the other tools of Access is what's true makes you lighter, a lie makes you heavier. And for those of you that don't know Access, Access is not religious, okay? But you can be any religion you want, doesn't matter, okay? Or spiritual, or any of those things, whatever you want to be, okay? This is about you being you, and hopefully being the coolest, awesomest version of that possible. And so anyway, so here I was, you sinner, exactly, that's me. Thank you. And so I go out into the woods and I put my back up against a tree and I'm like, Jesus, I don't know if you really exist, because I see a bunch of people who are doing all kinds of stuff that is not like what I think you would be if you did exist. But if you are real, I would like to invite you into my heart to cleanse my sins, because I'd like something different. And this was me at 12 years old. And I feel this energy go, and it was a sense of peace. It was a sense of joy, and it was a sense of what we call an allowance in Access, total allowance of everything, where everything was just an interesting point of view. I spent the next 2 years for everything that would have upset me before saying, literally, give it up to Jesus, okay? Which is so funny, because that's a great joke also, where it's like, give it up to Jesus, praise be Lord Jesus, but here was me being me, right? And yeah. I couldn't even tell anybody about this experience, but it was, and here's the other reason I'm bringing this up is because who cares what it looks like? Who cares what the venue is that gets you to be more of you? If it's going to get you to be more of you, do it. Why not? No matter what anybody else has as a point of view. And so I had this level of peace where literally everything, because my stepmother hated me and she was just mean and invalidative continuously my entire life. And I had all these problems with her and problems at home. And they said I was never doing enough and all of blah. And with everything that would come up, I'd go, give it up to Jesus. And I would be in total allowance. I never went into reaction. Okay. So here I am in this state. And I had been saving up because I wanted to buy some stuff at the local liquor store, and not liquor at 12 years old, but, like candy. And I had some candy and I wanted some books, some magazines, some not comics, but magazines with like toys and stuff in them. I had all these things I was going to get, right? I don't know, 10 or 20 bucks. I don't remember what it was. And so here I am being just like this walking, talking space of just loveliness. And I'm walking, and a homeless guy, I walk around this corner and a homeless guy walks towards me and he's like, hey man, do you have any money? I'm really, really hungry. And I was like, well, yeah, I got my $20, but I was kind of hoping to spend it on stuff, but I think you probably need it more than I do. So I gave it to him and I'm like, well, I guess I'm not going to the store now. So I walked back around the corner the way I had just come 30 seconds ago. I turned the friggin' corner and there's a $20 bill lying on the sidewalk. And I was like, I picked it up and I was like, thank you, Jesus, And I walked to the store and I bought my stuff, and I never forget that, because that was being me. And I got to say, I got to a place, so that was 12. And a couple of years later, I went into judgment of yelling at people who were being mean to a friend of mine. And I lost it because I went into judgment of me. Or so I thought I lost it. But if you fast forward to when I was 30, it was like I had that in this 2-year period. That's what I started getting again, and way more than that when I started doing Access. Yeah. And it's the way I like to be in the world. It's like I would like to be here as a contribution to empower everybody, to make everybody's world greater. And it's weird because we live in a world where so few people are willing to receive that, because they always think you want something from them, or you're up to something or something. And it's like, and sometimes it takes people years to get that there are people in this world that are here to contribute, and that they're not looking for anything other than to contribute, because it makes them happier and makes the world greater.
Yeah. And And I love that story because it's so much, it's the energy you were being, and there's no judgment and it's allowance. It doesn't matter what it is. Jesus, your religion, and I love access consciousness. If you're new to access consciousness, one of the things we have is a definition of consciousness, which is consciousness includes everything and everyone and judges nothing and no one. And it's interesting to see people want to apply judgment and right and wrong even to something like consciousness. And I just want to say I'm so grateful for you and the Being You book and all these tools, because it really it's such a different perspective and way of being in the world that really doesn't have any of that sense of judgment and just a very different target.
That.
Being you. Yeah.
And this target is fully within our grasp, and now more than ever, and if you're, no matter, the beauty of being you is no matter what is going on in the world, you still have you, and you still have a sense of ease, and you can still have a sense of joy and a sense of possibilities no matter what it is.
Thank you so much, Dain. And thank you everybody for being on and watching. And you can find more out about Dain at your website, drdainhere.com, or you might be watching this on YouTube or
that
Facebook.
Sounded like a cue to put it up. Here we go. Woo! The tech wizard now. Woo!
Nice job. On there's a lot. You have like all sorts of free resources and videos and things you guys can find there. And we have mentioned the energetic synthesis of being class, which you have one every few months or so. There's one that happens to be coming up this weekend. You can find those there or at that website /ESP. You can find links to the Being You book there. You can find on Amazon, anything. But just thank you for being you, for showing up how you do, for offering so much to the world from the space of no judgment. And here it is. Choose what works for you, because it's such an invitation.
Thank you. And this, one other thing we forgot to tell people. Yes. International Being You Day is May 22nd. This is going to be the first ever International Being You Day. And it was created in conjunction with the people that do all of those national, international days. And they get like all these applications, and they only accept, 20 to 30 a year, and they get 20,000 applications. And so we applied because I wanted this concept to be in people's worlds. And so May 22nd, we're going to have a 12-hour exploration, invitation, inspiration, and play, basically. And please come and join us. There will be more information to follow on that. But I forgot to say it before because I was going to say it earlier, but I did not. And please come and play.
Yeah, and if there's, you did a whole quick announcement video on that a couple days ago. So on Dain's YouTube or Facebook, you can find that video where you talk more about the day. And we very soon will have a website for you all for more information. It will be beingyouday.com, but it's not ready. So for now, just go to Dain's website and or social, and we will make sure you guys have all the information, because I know your target is to really include the world in that. It's not just about, it's about being you.
Yeah, for all of us. Let's do this thing.
Yeah. Thank you, Dain. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you, Miss Emily. Thanks, everybody. See you soon. Bye-bye. Bye.